So anyway, for those of you who haven't joined with us before, I'll just tell you very quickly. This is a series called Coaching Connection, and it was originally designed for young adults who haven't been around as long as the rest of us, to develop life skills to deal with something like a pandemic that has just brought such a disruption to our lives. And we put together an amazing series and list of presenters like Bonnie to address topics, things that are just different things that are facing all of us, not just young adults, but facing all of us. The young adults, we thought, may need a little bit of help, tools, to deal with these things. And several people said, well, it's affecting all of us. Can we also call in and participate? And that's just evolved. Of course, everybody can participate. And so anyway, I don't remember which one this is. I think it's like the 12th one that we're doing. We have one more next week. Fantastic. Everybody is just so great. And we'll talk about that at the end about the topic of that one. But in general, Positive Charge PDX is a nonprofit organization here in Portland, Oregon. And I'll let this person in. I should turn that off. I will. Bonnie, once you get going, I'll turn that off so that we don't have to deal with that. And Positive Charge PDX is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to amplify kindness, and by doing different projects and events that make a positive impact in our community and in our world. And this year we had this amazing lineup, as we usually do, of really cool things to do that are usually face-to-face, and like businesses and people, like all of us, we have had to make changes, and because of the pandemic. And this is one of those things, and that we have done in making virtual a virtual event. And so anyway, I will you can look at our website. It's positivechargepdx.org. We also have two different Facebook pages, Positive Charge exclamation point PDX, and then Positive Charge PDX, just plain. Anyway, each of those pages offer different features, and one's a business page, one's a group page. That's the whole reason why there are two. We would really rather have one, but whatever. Anyway, so lots of different ways to see what we do. I'm not going to take up a lot of time doing that now. I'd rather just get to our talk. So anyway, I would like to introduce Miss Bonnie.
Can I say one thing before you get in? And that is, you mentioned all of the past talks that have happened. And yes. So you can easily on the website see the link to our YouTube page, which features the recordings of those talks. And so it's really valuable if some young adults, even if you are looking for a new job. There's so much incredible information in those recordings, and you could look at them on your own. So I just highly recommend going to the website, scrolling down, finding the list of the past talks and the YouTube link.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruthie. Okay, so I would love to introduce Bonnie. Bonnie has been practicing a psychotherapist for 40 years, even though she doesn't look like it. She holds an LCSW degree and has extensive training in crisis work, adoption, trauma, and attachment. She's a certified EMDR therapist. Maybe you can explain to us what that is, and trained in Flash. Regardless of all that, the most important part of her work is developing relationships that are open, honest, emotionally fulfilling, and lead to growth. She has a private practice in downtown Portland, but of course, most recently taking place in her living room. And with that, I would love to introduce you to Bonnie Berg.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little technically challenged. So all I'm seeing on my screen is there more people than are just right here on my screen?
We have, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you, up in your right-hand corner, click gallery view?
Yeah, I am on gallery. Is there, if I scroll one way or the other, are there more people? I'm just wondering if there are people I'm not seeing.
9 total right now.
Okay, and I'm only seeing 2 live humans. You 2 don't count. Hi, person in the middle. Man who's floating around in space. Here.
You may want to try speaker view.
How do I see everybody else?
Yeah. If you look at speaker view, you should be able to see everyone.
Oh, I just see you, darling.
Really?
Yeah, quite lovely. All right, well, there you have it. At some point, somebody can tell me what to do to see everybody else. If there are any other faces out there, I'm sorry I can't see you, I'd like to. So, crisis. My talk is, what is a crisis? Why is it an opportunity? And how can I make it one? In 1959, President John F. Kennedy, and there's enough people who know who that is. Young person, you know who that is? JFK, yeah, not good, okay. So, very important person. At that point, we as a human being, our president, the whole world regarded him with a tremendous esteem. And he gave a speech in which he said, the Chinese have 2 characters for the word crisis. One is danger, the other is opportunity. This was a bit of knowledge that was just kind of known to be true. I certainly thought it was true. I even did a presentation at a crisis conference where I had those gorgeous characters, calligraphy, danger, opportunity. So in preparing for tonight, this is what I learned. That's not true. That is just absolutely not true. In fact, what those 2 characters mean are that crises are really bad and really bad things happen. In fact, the author, whose name is Victor Mayer, M-A-I-R, he enlightened me about this and then went on to say, any would-be guru who advocates for opportunities in the face of a crisis should be run out of town on a rail. For her advice will only compound the danger of the crisis. Huh. So Mr. Myers, having none of this Pollyanna-ish way of trying to make lemonade out of lemons, this created a crisis for me, a crisis of confidence in my blind acceptance that something was truth. That crisis was indeed both a danger and an opportunity. So I want to tell you that this is the most important lesson of this talk, which has nothing to do, well, it does have to do with crisis, which is that it created this opportunity for me to realize that it is incredibly important to question our own truths, our own assumptions, our own beliefs, and never has there been a time that it's more important to do that. It's called critical thinking. I don't know if they teach it in school, I never got it, but man, it is just crucial. I'm 70 years old, and for a lot of those years, I would have told you, this is a true fact without ever having looked into it. In fact, I bet if you say to most people, the Chinese have 2, da-da-da-da, they'll say, yeah, I know. So, all right, that's like the most important lesson. You can all go to bed now. The rest of this has to do with the deep dive that I got to take, again, because of COVID and because of having this opportunity to do this talk at the time because of COVID. So I started thinking, what actually is a crisis? Is it true that it's both a danger and an opportunity? If so, who said so? Why did they say that? And most importantly, I wanted to come out with a now informed understanding of what my belief system is about crisis. And here is what I learned, and I love it because I love stupid little data like this. So the origins of the word crisis come from the Greek word crisis, which is spelled with a K. I don't know how it's pronounced, I don't speak Greek. But that word meant a separating, a judgment. All right. Went along like that until about the 300, 400 BC, when Hippocrates, the grandfatherish person of Western medicine, took this word and co-opted it to be used as a medical term, meaning the turning point of a disease when an important change takes place, indicating either recovery or death. This, by the way, is an inflection point, this way or that way. So I decided that that is most likely the origin of the idea that the word crisis describes both danger and opportunity. All right, so now I know where that comes from. Now I know that it's really not just a medical word anymore. In fact, this is a word that is used very loosely and ubiquitously right now, right? So I started looking into what does it actually mean to be in crisis. And this is my own personal definition, and I rather like it. So a crisis is an external or internal event that jolts us out of our desired state of stability and predictability, overwhelming our normal coping abilities. That's extraordinarily important. It overwhelms our normal coping abilities. So, a crisis is nothing if not an agent of change. Should be a superpower. Dun, 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 dun. So the fact is that when there is a crisis, you have to change. The circumstances have to change. It's why it's such a wonderful, wonderful thing, these crises. Okay, I digress. So again, because the crisis now is an inflection point where everything that was no longer is, everything that now has happened allows you to have the opportunity to make what can now fill the space of what was. And I'll come back to this because this is really the nubbins of this whole thing. So I got all messed up in my thing, so I got to circle back. So the idea that because this crisis forces change, because left to their own devices, human beings will resist change like crazy. In fact, all biological beings, entities, resist change. Every organism craves homeostasis. I don't know if you remember that from biology, but that's when there's the state of optimum functioning in the organism. All of our interrelated stuff is all working exactly as it's supposed to be. For we human organisms, our homeostasis is best achieved with routine, stability, and predictability. A crisis disrupts all of that precisely, and that forces circumstances to change. And so we must adapt, reestablish homeostasis, or die. In the biggest terms, again, back to the medical model, it's really like that. Now, for most of us, the way we use the word crisis, it's really not about necessarily life or death. But the important thing about a crisis state is it can feel like it. And it can really spiral out of control to a totally catastrophized situation where you set yourself up and your neurochemistry, I'm going to circle back on this a lot, that we have a threat system. And when we are under threat, and a crisis is a threat, our neurochemistry helps us deal with the danger by releasing, in the case of an actual crisis, really a fire hose worth of cortisol and adrenaline and epinephrine. And all of that stuff floods our system, which enables a petite mother to lift a truck off of her baby son. we've all heard those stories. They're actually true. Because when you've got that much stuff surging, you are nothing more than a primitive organism that is going to survive no matter what. The problem becomes the danger of this is that in this case, fear is the energizing principle. And we use metaphors in trauma world of turning on, pressing the gas and the brake. So it's a good metaphor that we are cars, and in our system, we have gas that helps us go, and you press on the gas pedal and you're going to go. And in our case, the gas pedal is something called the vagus nerve that runs through our body that releases this neurochemistry. Again, fabulous if you're lifting a truck. Really detrimental to our nervous system if you keep it on, because now what you're dealing with is all of the anticipated dangers. All right, so let me bring this back down, because the most important thing to everything I'm saying right now comes to this. There's this understanding of what creates a crisis, what's going on in your biology. But at this point, you have a choice. And the choice point is that, again, this is a very superficial understanding of the neurobiology of this. And in fact, you can go to my YouTube thing from the last time and get a better understanding. But the idea is that there really is a choice that you have. And at this point, your choice is, if you only keep your focus on the actual current dangers, and even worse, which is what we do, you focus on the anticipated dangers, then you will stay in a state of fight or flight. As fear then is the energizing principle, you run a real risk of putting on that gas too hard and too long. So that then you have what we say is neurochemistry that was kept that was developed over eons to keep us from being eaten alive, will now start eating you alive, because these are major stress hormones and they don't help us think optimally. They help us get out of danger, which is a very limited perspective of thinking. All right, so that is a choice, and you actually have that choice, and I think that is so important to remember. I don't care what is happening to you, you actually have a choice. Do I want to keep my foot on the gas, or do I want to let it up? And that, if you decide you do want to try to let up on the gas, then you need to develop strategies that give you more control over your threat system. Okay, and you want to be able to control your threat system, in fact, to use its energy to deal with the immediate danger of the event, but then to be able to put the brakes on. That is being in charge of your threat system as opposed to it being in charge of you. And one of the best ways to neutralize the threat system is to find ways to release soothing neurochemistry. And soothing neurochemistry is serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. These are things that help your brain, the soothing part of your brain, tell your threat part of your brain that things are okay, that we can calm down now. It's from that state that we start allowing in our brain to have a broader perspective on what's happening and the possibilities. And right there enters opportunity. So I'm going to go back, and I didn't have to do a deep dive into opportunities, but I did look up what is an opportunity, and I found this absolutely fabulous. Of course, I didn't cite where it was. I think it's from the Webster Dictionary. And it says an opportunity is a set of circumstances that make it possible for you to do something. That's really, it's not good or bad. It's just a set of circumstances that make it possible for you to do something. So now you're going to see why I'm so excited about crises. A crisis creates the circumstances. And then it's up to you to do something. Okay? You got a choice. You got a choice. You got a choice. So how can you start to conceptualize turning the crisis into an opportunity? How am I doing in time? Not bad. All right. So honestly, the first step is you go inside. This is all about creating opportunity first from the inside out, as opposed to expecting it from outside in. So the truth is, and I don't know how many of you even know this, but you really can't actualize anything unless you believe it's possible. So you all know the saying that seeing is believing, right? Well, there's a corollary, which is quite true and quite lovely, which is believing is seeing. If you do not believe you can see something, you're not going to see it. And conversely, if you believe if you believe in something, you are going to subconsciously search it out and build on that belief. So I wonder if I have time to divert into a story. How many of you want to hear a story? Raise your hands. Marvelous. I see all 4 of you who I can see. The rest of you I can't see, so you don't get a count. So this believing and seeing thing is something kind of woo-woo and blah, 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 and I love it. What the Bleep Do You Know, which is a really cool documentary thing, was the first thing that introduced me to that concept, and I loved it. And I was at a conference of EMDR, which is a therapy protocol for trauma. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, so these are all therapists, and they're probably at least 2,000, maybe even 3,000 people. And the presenter was showing us some of these exact things. He was a cognitive neuropsychologist, and we were talking about the brain and how we process things. And he said, now this is a great group to do this with, because you are all trained to observe. You're really, really good seers. I just know it. I feel that about you. You're a great therapist. So we're going to just do a little thing here. And I'm going to show you on the screen 2 basketball teams. One is green and one's yellow. And I want you to count. And I want you to count how many times the green team has the ball, how many times the yellow team has the ball. So blah, 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 so that everything goes dark and does this. And, you know, I'm looking because I'm going to show everybody that I'm like the best seer in the world. I'm watching and I'm counting and watching. I heard a little titter, but I didn't think about it. And I'm watching and I'm counting. And then the lights go on. He said, okay, how many people said yellow? And not very many people raised their hand. How many people said green? And most people raised my hand, and I'm feeling all proud of myself. And he said, and how many of you people saw the gorilla that walked across the basketball court? And 10 people raised their hand out of 2,000 at least. Let's say 2,500. And my first thought was, that's no way. He's playing with us. I would have seen a gorilla. And then he shows it again. And this time I'm looking for a gorilla, and I'll be darned if in the middle of that game, a man in gorilla suit comes by, stands center court, bangs on his chest, and slowly walks out. It plays with your brain because you have to truly accept that you're really liable to miss a lot in life. So don't miss your opportunities. That was all about. All right. So let's go to believing and the possibility. And let me tell you something. Believing that something's possible doesn't mean you have to throw open the French doors. It means you can say, I sure am not feeling the possibilities in this crisis right now, but since anything's possible, all right, maybe it's not possible for me. Maybe it's possible for Sally to have something good happen. But that opens the door. That's all it takes. Because the greater part of you wants to feel good. Trust me on this. So ask yourself honestly if you can believe that there could be a possibility. If you can't believe that, don't go any farther. Then, well, I like talking, and I think talking is good. So that's probably a good idea to talk to somebody about your resistance and try to figure out, you know, what would be the cost of well, for most people, the cost is that you're going to get your hopes up and get disappointed. And that's just nonsense. You're paying the toll twice. So I would just get rid of that one. But there are lots of things that people might find that precludes that. So if you're one of those, get help, talk about it, write about it. There are many buses to the same station. Be a monk and be, what's that word? Contemplative? contemplative about it, but figure out how you can embrace the possibility of opportunity. Now, once you've acknowledged that it is possible, that there can be an opportunity or more in this crisis, then again, you go inside. This is really an inside-out process. You go inside and you start enjoying the process of imagining what the opportunities might be. I said this in my last talk, it's such an important piece of understanding ourselves. There is a part of us that does not know whether something's real or imagined. If you fully imagine it enough, you will release the same neurochemistry as if it already happened. So if I got an opportunity to be, I don't know what I want to be famous in a movie tomorrow, I would feel a certain way. If I imagine enough that that's going to happen, I will also feel that way. Not sustained, but you can do that. And when you're thinking about opportunities, you're going to have to wade through all of the reasons why it won't happen and just doubt those doubts. Go for the enjoyment. If nothing else, you'll spend a couple minutes enjoying what's going on in your head. Imagine if I could do anything right now, what would I want? Let it fly, fluff this out, make it feel exciting. And from this inner place, then look out. From this inner place of open, excited, creative possibility, then you look out and you really are very interested in watching what might be out there for you to join. Or what do you need to do to create your own? Okay, now look, I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff at you, and then I'm going to want to talk about it. All right? So the reality is this for most of us. It's ever-changing, it's unfamiliar, it's unpredictable, it's uncertain, it's ambiguous, it's uncomfortable, and it's uncontrollable. That's a crisis for the human species that is unbelievable. Our emotional states are fear, worry, doubt, frustration, anger, profound sadness. And these are very, very real responses to very, very real stimuli. Between every stimulus and every response lies free will. It may be a sliver, but it's always there. And if you think it isn't, then you have relinquished all control to some unknown entity out there, because it's really up to you. So in understanding that, you also really want to buy into the idea that the objective reality of whatever you're going through is only a piece of what matters. What matters equally much, I think more, is how you choose to interpret and respond to that external event. That's an internal thing. And in that internal place, we have enormous power. And that is actually your freedom. That is actually your freedom. So, not bad. So, in order to, I think, for me to learn, it's nice, these words and all this teaching, it's academic. Now I'd really like to see if we can apply some of this stuff. And in order to do that, I'd love to know if any of you are willing to discuss the opportunities that these waves of crisis. I mean, I think that is certainly what's unprecedented in my lifetime, and most people I know. It's not, they're waves, they just keep coming. God knows what's going to be next. Woo-hoo. So if anybody feels like talking about what are the opportunities that these waves of crisis have opened up for you. Another thing I'd love to talk about is anybody here feeling that they are in a crisis that has them in a high danger mode? So their gas is down and hard, and they think it may not be serving them, or they can make a case that it's serving them just fine. Because sometimes you got to have your pedal to the metal. And the other thing is just a discussion about what are the various ways to bring yourself into a homeostatic state, because they're endless, really. Okay, now everybody's going to want to talk at once. I love it. Oh, goodbye, Zoe. She's out. Notes. I should do that chat thing. Do you want to unmute everybody? Does anybody want to unmute themselves if they want to? Oh, there we are. Is the damage caused by stress hormones reversible? I am not a doctor. I will tell you my best guess that when you're young they are, but the older we get, the harder it is for our bodies to regenerate stuff. That's my answer. I don't know who asked the question, but anybody have any knowledge on that one? No? Okay. You can all hear me, yeah? Nod your heads. Everyone alive? All right, great. So,
I will give you a verbal yes.
all right, so that's it for that. Nobody has any questions, huh? Yikesies.
Connie, I have a question. I'll just ask you,
yeah, please just talk to me.
Okay. So, and I've been trying to figure out how to even ask this. So outside of a pandemic, we could think, and everyone I know is very unique. Everyone's different, but we could think this is something is difficult. You think I've come to a bridge, and this bridge is really hard to cross because I just haven't had to cross this bridge before, or I mean, it could just be doing something, to get through the day or something. I don't know what it is. And you think, boy, I just don't think that I can do this, or I don't know how to, I don't have the skills to make a decision or to do whatever it is that has to be done. I'm just thinking generically here. So now here's the pandemic, and we've got so much now that is interfering in our minds. We've got, as we said in the promo, we've got work, we have school, we have the pandemic, we have politics, we have climate change. All of these things are playing in our heads. That is weighing on top of, let's say, we come to this little bridge in our day and we're thinking, I just don't even know how I'm going to make it across this figurative bridge because I just can't think of how to manage it. And I know it's at work or school or life or whatever it is. How do you know, or maybe you're observing it in somebody else, how do you know that it rises to the level of a crisis, or it's just that requires help because you can't cope with it at the time, or you just can't cope in general?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? You just can't cope, or you just can't cope at that moment. Am I making sense?
I think so. Let me take a stab at it. We'll have dialogue with it, really, because it's a great question. It starts with I can't cope is not an absolute objective truth, and the person needs to know that. So the first thing you want to say is, I feel like I can't cope right now. And what makes it a level of crisis, if again, go back to at least my working definition, which is your normal coping abilities don't work. Now, sometimes our normal coping abilities don't work because we are so flooded with terror when all of that, again, that activizing. So that is exactly when your gas pedal is pressed down too hard. So not sure if that answers your question even in the beginning. Let's see. So it's a crisis and you need to get help when it seems to be outside of what used to be, even if it was a couple hours ago, your normal coping mechanism. So we could call that a crisis. So there's that. The idea that we are now compounding crises on crises is kind of, I think, what's happening in the micro of each of us individually is happening in the macro, which is that organisms that and systems that have been stressed cannot support themselves in this crisis. Government's failing, healthcare is failing, education is failing, because they were systems that were already highly stressed. So your person who couldn't metaphorically cross the bridge was probably in a fairly stressed state, both physiologically and mentally, or else that person could figure out how to find another way around. So the idea, I think what I'm trying to say is that it's an awfully hard call. And in fact, it's an impossible call when you are actually confronted with life or death. That's not a time to go all into opportunities. I agree with Mr. Mayor on that. That is a time to get out of the danger. But then with a crisis, what is created is a whole new landscape. And that's where you go into it with this understanding that is already a lot calmer, is that you really can do it. And when that voice says, I can't cope, you say, well, I can, in fact, ask people for help. I can, in fact, sit down right now and breathe. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to bring us to a different place. And sometimes we can't cope. And that's when we really better have a community. But very few of us can't cope forever and still stay alive, which is why, in fact, the whole history of our species, the planet, is one crisis after another that destabilizes, and then we restabilize in a new, I like to think, better way.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was thinking also to tag on to that, when you notice that in somebody else, and somebody else maybe is having a hard time coping with getting over that bridge, right? They don't know what to do. They're stuck in a situation, and you think, do I rescue them? And what do you evaluate? Are they safe? You know, I don't know what you do. That's my first thing. Are they safe? And if they're safe, you know, the rest of the world right now is in such a place where we're not really in a routine life right now. And what we're used to doing, we have to, just like our group, just like Positive Charge, just like businesses everywhere, you have to pivot, right? You have grit. You just have to be creative, exercise those creative muscles that haven't been used in a long time. And as long as someone is safe, in my mind, I don't know. That's what I'm asking is, do you just let somebody sweat through it? Or at what point do you say, wow, that person really needs additional help?
I couldn't begin to answer that in such a broad way.
Okay.
If it's my spouse, if it's a friend, if it's the world at large. But I think, I'd like to think that basically the first step is always to ask the person if they need anything. And then depending on my relationship with the person would be to either respect that or to say, I'm overruling you on that one, as your parent, as your therapist is. So does that answer your question? I'm not sure really how I could answer it more specifically.
Well, and I'm just being hypothetical too, you know.
And if
I don't have an
you're asking what are the ways to help a person, let's say they want help, but that's not what you're asking. You're asking what happens when you see somebody else in crisis and you want to help them.
Yeah, and I'm really thinking of more in this pandemic time where everyone is being forced outside of their normal routine. And it's challenging. Life is challenging for everybody right now. But at what point does it rise to the level of crisis just because it's different, just because it's difficult, just because we can't rely on our usual routine to get through the day? We all have everything weighing on us, right?
And people are adapting.
Mhm.
Everybody. I mean, certainly, you know, it's such a hard thing to talk about because it is not an illness that is we're all together, and even, you know, not even a little bit. It is affecting people who are disadvantaged in way huger ways. But I hope that everybody finds some opportunities in this. If not in the immediacy of how am I going to feed my family, then maybe in the afterwards of, oh, I have a community to rely on that I never knew I did before.
Right.
But again, I am just going to go to my grave if that's what it takes, championing that crises are the greatest arena for growth to happen.
Mhm.
And the opportunities really are there. And the other thing is to understand that an opportunity, guys, an opportunity can be today. I have the opportunity to take a little longer walk with my dog. That's an opportunity. So.
Thank you.
If I might, this conversation just made me think about a book called Simplicity Parenting by a Waldorf educator and psychologist whose name is Kim John Payne. Bonnie, are you familiar with Kim John Payne's work?
Mm-hmm.
In his book, Simplicity Parenting, Kim talks about soul fever, and he talks about the drip, 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 drip of all of these kinds of things that Sally was mentioning. You know, that the pressure, you know, everything, especially on kids, and how it actually can manifest as, and can be called PTSD. And how it, you know, actually can manifest in children as that. And he actually has these strategies for how to manage through this soul fever. And two things that I remember specifically from this are control what you can. And I think in art, you know, what you're saying, you know, is that we have, you know, this free will. And therefore, you know, we can, you know, focus our attention on what we can do. And that can be soothing in a lot of ways. And the other point that I remember from reading his great book is filtering. And I just find that in this particular time of so much out there dripping, 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 dripping on us in terms of crises, that filtering is a good strategy to consider. Like filtering the news, you know, filtering how much negativity we allow in, filtering the good stuff, or, you know, actually embracing the good stuff and the positivity, which is why Positive Charge got started. We wanted to just hear good news for a change. And so I just wanted to point those two little strategies out, hopefully that you might help someone.
That is great. Tell me what the first one was, because I forgot it and it tweaked something that I wanted to.
Oh, it was, you know, oh boy, what did I just say? It was all about, what's that?
Anybody remember? I'm so sorry. It was one of the first strategy.
Focus on what you know.
Say it again.
Focusing on what you can do. Do what you can do.
Thank you. That is what prompted me. Thank you so much.
What you can control. Do what you can and focus on what you can control.
Exactly. What actually makes a crisis is not a crisis, a trauma. You say a crisis too, actually. Actually, it's very similar. What makes a trauma is the helplessness and powerlessness that a person feels over the event. It's really not the event. So, you know, it actually is exactly like in a crisis. So having a sense of control is extremely important to us. And that is exactly why I like that idea, if you can think about it, that the circumstances will happen, but you do have a control always on how you respond to it. It's a big call and you're not going to get it right, but it still exists. And that should keep us all from feeling like helpless victims in the middle of all this. that we do have some power. We certainly have the power to turn off the TV, you know, and put down our devices and all of this stuff, but it's not easy. It's not easy, especially if we've been conditioned to respond a certain way. Like if our brains have been conditioned through having had a lot of trauma, or what you're saying about that person, then you're really asking a big call for people to think differently. And that's where the crisis, in fact, the greater the crisis, the more it's going to force a person to do differently. Adapt or die is really kind of true. So that's the good news you could offer somebody who feels like, oh my God, I can't do this. Great, you're going to learn how to do something else. Or you're going to die, but I don't know if you want to mention that to them. Probably not the best. Huh. So in many ways, this just could not be more exciting. I think I told you, Sally, I did tell you, and you just couldn't get it, that I'm a crisis junkie. I love crises, and that just spun your head, I think. But it's exciting. So much growth can come from this. I deal with people all the time. I'm sure you all know them. I hope none of you are that way, who stay stuck in pretty miserable situations because they're not miserable enough. It's not enough to push a person to change. And some people are way more resistant than others. And for me, every client gets to hear that I don't care if you're miserable. I certainly would love you to be happy. But if you're stuck, that's not acceptable behavior. So anyway, in the absence of talking, I will just keep doing it.
You know, one other thing that I was thinking that therapy sort of fills, you hear my Pittsburghese, fills a little bit of space with is having a structure in place that helps to support you to make better choices when you have that free will.
Well, yeah.
And, you know, and it doesn't, you know, and it might not be just therapy. It might be having a group of friends who are positive energy, as opposed to hanging out with friends who are not positive and bring you down. So that structure, I think, can also be a really great strategy.
Yeah, it can. Structure is important. Remember, the things that make us humans feel that we are in a safe or homeostatic place are predictability, routine, and what was the other one? Stability. Predictability, stability, routine. So.
Bonnie, I have a question for you, and this is for people who will be listening, watching the recording later on. For parents who are working right now, working from home, and trying to help their kids learn remotely, manage that circus right now, that's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, it is.
Do you have recommendations?
Again, I don't think I can say that. Well, I can say a few things broadly, which is being a good enough parent is plenty good enough. And people should drop expectations and have a whole lot more faith in their children. Children are really remarkably adaptable. Again, it's very hard to talk in sweeping things because as I say that, I'm under, you know, there's the more disadvantaged, not the more, most disadvantaged people are just kind of, I don't know, but I feel badly making a sweeping statement about the opportunities that this has. But anyway, what I would, I guess, say to parents, and I have children who are parents, and they seem to be doing pretty well at this, is how can you adapt to make this work? Now, for my kids, they were able to find pods of other families, and they share being the kind of teacher of the day while the kids do their thing. And they've got a system, and it's working, and it's amazing to see. And a lot of my clients, I've found, have found ways to make it work. But there are many people for whom there aren't ways to make it work, although maybe they are. maybe even the most stressed out, disadvantaged human right now is finding a way to make it work. So what do you say to parents? Somebody help me out here. What do you say to parents? Are you a parent? What's the guy's name? Mr. Man, who are you?
Gary.
Gary, are you a parent?
Yes,
You're
I
on
am.
mute.
I had to unmute. Yes, I am. I am a parent. Twice.
Are they stressed out like crazy?
No, they're not. Well, one lives in Florida, and the other one who lives at home, he's 17, and he's doing okay. He's remarkably well adjusted to being on the computer all day, and he even is on the computer after he's at school. He's involved in youth groups, and he's adapted to it very well. I don't know how I would have adapted at that age, but I asked him just this morning, "How you doing?" And he said, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah, he'd love to be back in school and be with friends, but now everything is virtual. I mean, all the contacts that they make are virtual, and he's getting through it. He's doing remarkably well.
This is in 8 months. I doubt that the species has had, no, I'm sure we have had, and that's again the beauty of a crisis. You have to adapt. And my God, would you have ever thought just a year ago, if he said, you know, your kid's going to have to be at home going to school next year, and you're going to be there. I mean, not possible. By the way, one of the little tricks to remember is that human beings are abysmal at predicting our emotional futures. So when you say, Gary, I don't know how I would have done. I would have been terrible. Chances are not. It's the anticipation of stuff is always bigger, both in the good stuff and the bad stuff. But it's really helpful to calm your anticipatory anxiety by realizing that the things you think are going to be horrible almost always are not, or at least not as horrible as you think in thinking of them. But anyway, I have to say what's really weird, Gary, is that your presentation is just absolutely lovely. It proves my whole point. Here is a kid who adapted, new opportunities, growing, doing more stuff. I kind of am in the same ballpark. Everybody I know, I got a lot of clients, and they're not all, advantaged. But I just keep hearing stories of how people are finding their way and doing okay. I'm sure there are people out there who aren't, but I don't know. I think human beings are quite remarkably able to go with the punches. What's that? Did anyone hear that? Sounded like a police thing. But, we got other crises on the way. So I would hope that everybody now feels that whatever tidal wave is coming at us in the next couple of weeks, that we are now able to not drown with the fear, but be able to start out saying, there will be opportunity here. I'm curious to see what it will be. And if I forget that, my friends, remind me when I call you on November 4th. Gary, thanks for being here. Rachel, God bless you. You're a good
Certainly.
You're going to go to heaven.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. That was great.
It was great. I really enjoyed it, Bonnie. It was terrific. A terrific presentation.
Guys.
Very much enjoyed it.
I lost my focus halfway through, and I hope you didn't know it, but I had no idea what I was saying at one point, which is a trick. I open my mouth and words come out.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you for creating a crisis in me by having to do this.
That's okay.
It was a great opportunity, Bonnie.
I know, an FGO.
So we have one. What's
What?
that? Oh, I was just going to say we have one more. Our very last one is next week, the last one in the series. And it's about, oh my gosh, hold on. I'm so sorry.
Finding your right life.
Thank you. What I had it right on my screen and now it's gone.
Yeah.
Finding Your Right Life. It's with Stephen Kaufman again. And he's going to wrap up our series. Bonnie's talk, her last one that she did is recorded along with all the others that we've done are on our YouTube. You can find them on positivechargepdx.org/ /mentors. This one will also be on there. And that's it. We do have a couple of things cooking that we will tell you about very shortly. Stay tuned to our Facebook page, Positive Charge PDX, as well as our website. And if you're not already receiving our newsletters that Ruthie composes and sends out, and they're very informative and really amazing, you can ask her for those at info@positivechargepdx.org, and then you will get her updated information about what we're doing, and especially for people who are not on Facebook or Instagram or all those other things. Did I leave anything out?
Just that it's an amazing, amazing group.
Yeah.
It looks for every opportunity to spread a little kindness in the world. So simple.
Yeah. So we'll see what 2021 will be like. Certainly didn't expect this to go on this long, but we will continue exercising our creative muscles just like this year.
No, and we will adapt and learn and grow.
Take opportunities.
And Mr. Mayor is somewhere throwing up. I gotta find that dude.
You know, Bonnie, maybe you were right and he was wrong.
I certainly think so. But he was right about those daggone Chinese characters. How did we miss that all these years?
So thank you so much. Good night.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone. Gary,
Bye, Rachel.
Rachel, thank you.
Good night, everyone. This
Be
was very
mom.
good. Good night. Well
Night.
done.